Well, I'm thinking that this is probably our total for today, unless somebody's coming late. So let me explain what I have in mind to do. Um, in part, this is occasioned by the fact that I needed to find a new story anyway. But I thought, what could we do that would be a little bit more creative and a little bit more engaging? And um, I looked at this story that I'm going to suggest that we start today, called Seven Beggars, uh, which is a long story. But fortunately, it's broken up into sections. Um, there's one long introductory section and then several smaller um, sections to follow, one for each day of the week. So what I'm proposing is that we kind of tough our way through the first section this week and next. And then we'll have one section for each week following. Does that sound all right to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, all right. So this is I will also add that because of the structure, it is a complicated story. But you guys are not afraid of complicated, and we've done complicated before. Uh, but there are a lot of references to things that you probably already know, like the multitude of things related to the number 7, and the Jewish attitude towards beggars, which we've dealt with actually in terms of the Rabbi Nachman material. I wanted to. I don't know if I've ever shared this joke with this group. If I have, you'll excuse me, but there may be somebody who hasn't heard it. And the reason I'm going to tell you this joke is it is what you need to know to understand what a beggar is in the Jewish tradition, because it's very different. The connotations are very different than we have commonly in Western folk literature for a variety of reasons. So here's the joke. There were two brothers. One of them was named Gansa, and the other was named Mishpocha. Does anybody know what the Yiddish phrase Gansa Mishpocha means? It means literally the whole family. When you're bringing everybody, you're bringing Gansa Mishpocha. You're bringing in everybody, the whole family, everybody there. Okay, so there are two brothers were named Gansa and Mishpocha, and they were schnorrers, which is the Yiddish word for, it gets translated as beggar, but it doesn't mean the same thing exactly. They were schnorrers, which meant they went around from house to house or from town to town, and they were asking for charitable donations, not to St. Jude's Hospital, but to themselves. This is how they made a living. They were, successful at it in the sense that they were able to sustain themselves through their lives, going from house to house. If you remember the beginning of Fiddle on the Roof, starts with a schnorrer, beggar. Alms for the poor, alms for the poor. Here, Nachum, here's 1 kopeck. 1 kopeck. Last week you gave me 2 kopecks. I'm sorry, Nachum, I had a bad week. So, says Nachum, if you had a bad week, why should I suffer? Okay, so this already tells you a little bit about what a schnorrer, what a beggar is. So here's the story. You have 2 brothers, Gansa and Mishpucha, and they go from house to house. asking for alms, for charitable donation. And this is how they live. It happened that among their clientele was the Rothschild family. They evidently lived near the house of the Baron Rothschild. And of course, they didn't know him, but they would always go to the front door of his house and knock, and the secretary or the aide of the Baron would see them at the door, and he'd give each one of them a golden coin. This went on for many years until finally one of the two brothers, Gansa, died. And the next time when Mishpucha, the remaining brother, went to the Rothschild house, he knocked on the door, and the secretary said, "Where's your brother?" And Mishpucha said, "Sad news, my brother Gansa passed away since the last time we were here." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that," said the secretary of the Baron Rothschild. Here is the golden coin that I have been giving you every whatever week or whatever for many years. And Mishpacha said, "No, wait a minute. Where's the second golden coin? The one that you used to give to my brother." And the secretary says, "I'm sorry, but since your brother has passed away, there's no reason for me to give a second golden coin." And Mishpacha, the remaining brother, says, "Wait a minute. Who is the inheritor of my brother, me or Rothschild?" Now, I love that joke, because what do we learn about a beggar, about a schnorrer from that joke?
Always trying to turn it to his advantage.
Well, see, that sounds almost, kind of scurrilous in a way, and I guess you could interpret it that way.
Cleverly.
It is clever. It is very clever, and the schnorrer lives by his wits, So he's got a story, he's got an angle, whatever. That's true. That's definitely a part of it. You think it was easy to talk to the secretary of the Baron Rothschild? I don't know. I think it probably was pretty difficult, especially since if you say something that he doesn't like, he doesn't have to give you anything at all. But
He's bold.
Sorry?
He's bold.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going.
What word? I didn't get that.
B-O-L-D, bold.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking chutzpah.
Yeah, chutzpah.
Yes. He is the epitome of chutzpah. He's owed. Rothschild is not the one in the position of power. The schnorrer is the one in the position of power. He feels owed. He feels entitled to the donation that was normally given to his brother. Now, when we think of beggars in our own society, we think of them as being powerless. They are dependent on other people, and they have to be a supplicant, which is also a synonym that we use for beggar. But the schnorrer is not so. The schnorrer is willing to speak truth to power, for sure. What was the justification, do you think, in the schnorrer's mind for insisting that he should be given the golden coin that normally would be given to his brother? So we would now have 2 golden coins. Who is getting the benefit of the alms giving?
Well, I think the beggar thinks that the schnorrer thinks that the Rothschilds will be closer to heaven or whatever if he gives. And I'm wondering, I know that Buddhist monks also are supplicants, but they're not schnorrers. And maybe Kim can edify us on that one. It's a totally different kind.
I don't know that word.
Supplicant? Asking for.
What does that mean?
It means asking for. It means that when some of the monks, that's how they live. They go and the people.
Oh, right. And one thing interesting is they're supposed to go in the same round every day, even if they know that a house gives nothing. They're supposed to keep going to that house, so they don't take advantage of like their data.
So there, in that situation, there's a custom or a tradition that you're supposed to give financial support to beggars who come.
Right. In fact, they say the reason we beg is to give people an opportunity to give. So
yes,
it's a gift.
That is exactly the
Right.
point. It is a mitzvah, not just a good deed, but a mitzvah, commandment, to give to charity, to give to somebody who is in need. So the one who's getting the real benefit is not the schnorrer, it's Rothschild who is giving you, supporting the schnorrer. And that's the idea, that's why he can stand up in front of the front door of Rothschild's mansion and be and say, there's just one cotton pick a minute here. Who is my brother's inheritor, me or Rothschild? No, it's an inheritance. It belongs to the brother. It's not some kind of free gift that the Rothschilds give just because it makes them feel good, or they think it's the right thing to do, or because they have a long history with these schnorrers. They have a positive obligation.
Just like putting aside the corner of a field.
Yes, that's exactly right. And
So do you get bonus points? I don't
no,
know.
they don't get any bonus points at all. That's the whole point.
You missed
Not
the
doing
opportunity.
special. They're just doing what they're required to do. They're doing I'll say the minimum, but I don't mean in the sense that they're being cheap or whatever, but they're required to give that donation.
So then it seems that it's not a mitzvah.
No, it is a mitzvah. It's a commandment.
How? Oh, I thought mitzvah was a good deed.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's not mitzvah in the sense of a good deed. It's a mitzvah in the sense of a commandment.
Oh, I didn't know there were the two meanings.
One is Yiddish, the other is Hebrew. Although,
For mitzvah?
yeah, a mitzvah meaning commandment is the meaning in Hebrew.
Oh, I didn't
In
know that.
Yiddish,
Okay.
It means, and they're pronounced slightly differently. The mitzvah, the word mitzvah in Hebrew is mitzvah. In Yiddish, it's mitzvah.
I see. Which syllable is emphasized?
Well, yes, and then it doesn't end with an ah, it ends with an eh in Yiddish. It's just that, this is standard transliteration from Yiddish, from Hebrew to Yiddish. The point is that what Rothschild thinks he's doing, or his secretary thinks he's doing a mitzvah, he's doing a good deed. But no, he's really not. He's really fulfilling a commandment. And if he doesn't give the coin, he's not fulfilling the commandment. And that is only because what? both those beggars are stand-up, independent human beings. They're not supplicants. They're not beggars in the sense that they have they're handing forward a tin cup or something. They're not sitting on the corner with a receptacle and a little sign says, "I haven't eaten in a week. Please give me $1." This is their job. They are owed it. And the Rothschilds are the ones who get the advantage, not the beggars. Okay, are we clear on this?
Got it.
Yeah, it's sort of like when I brought up the monk, I wasn't thinking that way, but that's what you're saying. This is, it is a blessing for me to give to somebody else. And the blessing is for me. I get the blessing and they
Right.
get the money or they get whatever.
They get a coin.
Yeah.
But you get the theological or the spiritual credit
Right.
for having given the coin to another person.
But it seems they should get some blessing too, because they initiated this blessing.
Well, all right. I wouldn't quibble about that. Yeah, they get a blessing too. And they get the utility of the coin. But this.
Well, and they have a job. They have a.
It is. It's a serious job. Yeah. I mean, it is a situation in which the schnorrer has worth as a human being. It's not about their dependence. It's about asking for what is theirs, asking for support which they deserve and which is part of who they are, yes, but who they are in the sense that they are standing up for their own integrity. So for the brother who is alive, he regards this as an inheritance from his brother. It's not a gift from Rothschild. From his point of view, it's an inheritance from his brother. So I mean, the attitude about a schnorrer is very different than we commonly get, at least in the Western tradition. So, by the way, what other mitzvah, commandment, is the Baron Rothschild fulfilling by having his secretary give a golden coin to these schnorrers? Anybody want to make a guess?
What other mitzvah?
Mitzvah is the Baron Rothschild fulfilling by having his secretary give a coin to these beggars who come to his door.
He shares some of the reward with the secretary who
Out. That's true too.
Okay.
But I'm thinking about a well-known mitzvah that we all talk about, especially at the High Holy Days.
Well, I don't know if this is High Holy Days, but there's the love thy neighbor as thyself, or treating.
That's true, although that's not
treating the other well.
I'm being very practical here. There's a mitzvah called pikuach nefesh, which means the saving of a life. When you have the opportunity to save a life, you are required to do it.
Right.
And these beggars, this is how they survive. This is by using these coins, not just from Rothschild, but whoever else they get coins from. That's how they support themselves. So you're fulfilling the mitzvah of pikuach nefesh as well. All right. So the reason I spent time on this is that this story starts out with what they would have called in Renaissance English poetry, the conceit of the beggar, that somehow the beggar stands for something more than just a person goes around asking for money. Not more than just a person who needs to ensure his or her sustenance. It's a very rich term. And when you refer to 7 beggars, we're already getting into another very rich area of Jewish tradition. What would that be, do you think?
Number 7.
The number 7, of course. What do you think? And we're just speculating now because we're gonna read the story. But what do you think the significance of there being 7 beggars might be? You're giving a coin to a beggar, and this is an obligation that you have. It's a mitzvah that you are performing. What would that? How would that be affected, or what would the nuance be of saying that there are 7 of them?
One for each day of the week.
One for each day of the week, right? Yes, of course.
Okay.
Of course, right. And what does the 7 stand for? The 7 days of the week, yes. What are the 7 days of the week?
Creation.
Sorry?
7 days from creation.
Yes, yes. So the significance here is that it has something to do with the creation of the world. It's the same metaphor, okay? So somehow, and here we can just sort of get a little taste of the idea, performing this mitzvah of supporting the poor as a mitzvah, as an obligation, as a responsibility, has something to do with the ongoing creation of the world. Now,
Well, when you have a building, you need to keep it in good repair. You need to keep building and adding to it. And your own body, you need to keep repairing it and keeping it in good shape.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely true. But I want to widen that a little bit, Judith, and put it this way. If you read the story of creation in the Torah, there is a very, very interesting ambiguity. Because within the space of a couple of verses, the length of creation is one time specified as 7. God rested on the 7th day from all the work that he had done on the previous 6. And in another spot, it looks like God continues to work on the 7th day. So why is there this curious confusion about how long creation takes? What was God doing creatively on the 7th day? Well, say the rabbis, it was an opportunity for God to finish not the physical work of creation, but the spiritual work of creation, adding another building block to create a kind of spiritual completion, which was not there just in the first 6 days. When the work of the 6 days is called Mussar Reshit. It's the physical universe, the stars and the moon and the sun and whatever, and the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, all of these physical entities that together make up the world. But the world is still missing something integral. That's the work of the seventh day, which is the spiritual enrichment or the spiritual completion, which requires no physical work to be done, but time and space for the cultivation of spirit, of meaning, of the inner life, of the soul, et cetera, et cetera. That's what the Sabbath is for. So that was, in a sense, work, but not work like the other 6 days. Work on yourself, work on who and what you are, work on growth as a human being, as an individual and as a person in relationship to God. So the point I want to make here is that all of this is included in the term beggar. It's all resonant with the word beggar in the Hebrew sense. And especially, we would say,
Your food is here.
yes, I'll be right back, sorry.
We want you to be nourished. So,
Yeah, what can I say?
what happened to Michael? He doesn't come anymore? You know?
He's been irregular, but he had asked Kim if we were going to meet today, and Kim said probably Atria was without internet for a week.
Oh, yes. We were without internet for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And so that's why we didn't meet last week. I want to know if that's the reason ultra-Orthodox people do the seventh day stuff every single day, or try to do it. Will they get closer to God faster or not?
I would assume so, but I'm not the one to ask.
No. We'll wait for our fearless leader to return.
I am.
Michael was going to come,
Yeah.
but he never knows when he has it.
We miss him. Just tell him we miss him.
Yeah.
Yes, please. So, what did I miss in the conversation?
I'll let you
Say your question.
My question was, is that the reason why the ultra-Orthodox try to study and get closer to God every single day? Is that bonus points?
Well, that's a good question. I'm sure that there's a variety of reasons that various individuals who we might call ultra-Orthodox study on a daily basis. Maybe it's because they want to become rabbis. Maybe it's because that's the tradition in their family. Maybe there's all sorts of possibilities. But in all these cases, as well as it is the case of somebody who only has time to study a little bit, the idea of studying Torah is about the continuing creation of the self, the completion of the creation of a human being. We are physically created like everything else in the universe. But human beings, unlike cows or what have you, have a part of who they are or who they're supposed to be, which is spiritual and requires, which is not finished when they are physically created. That's what's up to us to do. And this is ultimately, if you think about it, the rationale for what we are doing with Mussar. This is all about helping each of us and helping each other to finish what they used to very grandly and beautifully express in the old Union Prayer Book as the ongoing process of creation. they of course meant this in about physical creation as well, which is also true. You know, the process of the creation of the physical world goes on even after creation, so to speak, is accomplished. Now, there are always new species and so on and so forth. But with human beings, there is an essential part of ourselves which is not completed just because we come into physical existence. It requires additional sort of work. So this is a story, and the joke is about this work, which demands respect, even if you are monetarily dependent on somebody else.
Mm.
So this is what gives Mishpacha, the second brother, the temerity to stand up to the secretary of Baron Rothschild and to say, wait a minute, I have rights here. I have rights that I inherit from my brother, and they are not inherited by Rothschild. Just because my brother dies doesn't mean that he is not entitled to his charitable donation, which should be something by rights that comes to me, because this is it belonged to my brother and it's an inheritance. I mean, you think about it, the idea that helping the poor is something that they are owed, something that is theirs by right. This goes so much against the grain of modern American society.
It kind of when I first heard the story from you, you know, a few years ago,
Yeah.
It seemed in line with a negative aspect, that a negative view that some people have about Jews,
Uh-huh.
of being stingy, or you know, that they were trying to, the expression to Jew him or something.
Yeah, the Jew down means to
Jew down.
argue
And
unfairly. Yeah.
you know, I think just telling someone on the street that joke,
Yeah.
that was the impression that they would have of this beggar, that he was.
Really, you got to really twist that joke around to come up with that interpretation. First of all, the secretary is giving alms to the same at the same level to the surviving brother. He's not saying your brother, the other brother's here, not giving you anything. And the story is about the human integrity of somebody who is financially dependent on others. As, I mean, how that could be seen as somehow being about stinginess when the story is all about generosity.
Well, he found an angle. The beggar found an angle that would benefit him.
But it's not an angle, it's a commandment. He didn't invent something for his benefit. He's reminding the secretary of Rothschild that he has an obligation, which if he doesn't give the donation to the brother, he's not fulfilling. It's not he's not being clever in the sense that he's tricking the secretary into giving him a donation. He's reminding him of what his obligation is.
It's a paradigm shift of thinking.
Well, but yeah, because in the United States, we essentially think, speaking very broadly, that people who are indigent for a reason, that they don't deserve to be to live like people who are financially successful. This is all over the place, you know, and we do this to people who are poor all the time. You know, I love the fact that some congressman, I forget our name, is from the Michigan area, sponsored legislation that anybody who receives a government check, like somebody who gets, you know, Social Security or what have you, has to be drug tested. But he himself was found to be guilty of using drugs and almost lost his seat in Congress as a result of it. So there's no end to the hypocrisy with which we treat people who are poor. We very often treat them as if they're not as worthwhile or as deserving of respect as people who are financially viable. You just have to look. There was somebody not in this group, in the tourist study group, who brought up the question of the prosperity gospel, and this is a good example of it. If you are, this is a perversion or a misconstruction of Calvinist theology, that if you are righteous, God favors you in a variety of ways, among which is financial success. This is a function of being the right kind of person. And if you think about it, this is a part of this sort of our culture that is very deeply ingrained and which makes many people uncomfortable, but they don't see a way out of it. When I think about this, I always think of the old song by Yip Harburg, a very nice Jewish boy from Eastern Europe, came to the United States and wrote lots of very successful, popular songs. One of which was "Buddy, Can You Spare a Dime?" And I don't know if everybody knows the lyrics to that song, but it's a beautiful example of this. Once I built a railroad, I made it run against time. Once I built a railroad, now I'm done. Buddy, can you spare a dime? Song from the Depression years. He tries to argue, the singer of these lyrics tries to argue that the person should give him money because he had once been successful, now he's down in his luck. He had served in the World War and it was patriotic and so forth. He is in the position of having to beseech this person to give him a dime. Well, that's a far cry from saying, listen, that golden coin belongs to me, not to Rothschild. So I think it's hard, with all due respect, Kim, I think it's very hard to defend the interpretation that this is about Jews being stingy. I don't know. That's just me.
We'll ask my wife. I'll tell her the story.
Yeah.
And I think she'll have that impression.
Yeah, well, we've had the same kind of conflict with Linda before. But she didn't like the title of my website either. She took exception to it. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
There are two Lindas there. this brings up the person on the street corner. Do you give him $1 or do you not give him $1? And
Yeah.
that's it's the same thing.
It is the same kind of question, yeah. You know, there are lots of people who argue that by giving somebody a handout, you are furthering their dependence on handouts, and they're not encouraged to cultivate independence and so forth, which is an interesting way to think about it. I don't happen to agree with it. And the reason I don't agree with it is that somebody who comes up to you and asks you for a donation has already abased themselves just by having to ask for it. You know, it's not as if it's done with impunity. So, all right, there are a lot of different ways.
Something interesting here. We had a guy from Washington University come and talk to the students about poverty. And what he said was what they found now is that people move in and out of poverty at a great degree, where we think of the poor as a certain group of people. That's not really true.
Well, it's not a static group.
It's not a static group, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that's true in a sense when you think about human beings in general. All of us fall prey at various times to social and economic forces that are beyond our control. And sometimes they are the things we could control, and we can be smarter or not as smart about how we do things. But very often, it's not, these things are not because of some moral deficiency or some bad decision making by the individual. You know, if you are a coal miner, and that's what your family has done for generations, and you no longer have a job in the mine, that's not because you've made a bad decision. That's at least the beginning. It's because people don't use coal anymore.
We hope.
So now how you respond to that, you can be smarter, you can be not so smart, absolutely. But whether people use coal or fossil fuel in general is something that is not within the individual decision-making sphere of the average person. Oh,
Hi.
back to the gallery. Okay,
Well, there's we're not going to get to the story this time, but it's been, as you were stimulating. I was thinking, I have two people who come to my house occasionally, both of whom have green cards, and they have come from Mexico.
Yeah.
She, the woman who cleans my house and makes it livable, is really bright. And on another in another situation, she would be a teacher or a and Javier is the same way. He saw they take care of me, and I'm so happy. I pay them quite well. Way up.
I'm glad that you do. I mean, look, the question, we're arguing about the minimum wage now in our country. I would love to see some of the Republicans who are against raising the minimum wage try just for a month to live on the wages that many, many people in our country make. And the attitude that comes along with this low income level is that these people are defective in some way. That if they were smarter, if they were more dedicated, if they were more serious, they would be able to make a lot more money. And these larger forces are not part of what leads to their poverty. it's remarkable to me, and I'm not surprised about it. Um, this has been a part of American society since well before the so-called prosperity gospel in the latter part of the 20th century. Go all the way back to the sermons of Jonathan Edwards back in the colonial days, and you see the same idea. So in a way, it's, our depredation of people who are poor is a way of justifying our own avoidance of doing what we probably often either directly or indirectly feel or know is right. But we don't, it's our own fears and our own timidity that blocks us from doing these things. You think about somebody who is, to use an old word, who is miserly and who does not donate either directly or indirectly through charitable organization, whatever. What is their motivation? Well, I think a lot of us, and I think it is a component of our own sort of global insecurity, are afraid that our own ability to provide for ourselves could be hampered in some way or could be negated at any moment. All of us have a fear of this. And so, we want to make it the fault of the other person if they're poor, so that we can feel better about not making those donations or those gifts. I don't know. I'm sounding like some kind of left-wing socialist or something.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I know Karl Marx was against religion, but
Yes.
it seems
Religion was against him too. It was
What?
both ways.
but the source of each according to his means, each this distribution,
Yes.
it seems to be very similar to what we're talking about.
Well, I think, I'm no expert on Marxism, that's for sure. But just speaking as my own personally inexpert self in this field, it seems to me that communism by itself doesn't work. It has positive dimensions, but it also doesn't work fully. But neither does capitalism. We have in our country these days the widest income disparity among classes in the world. And this is not a surprise. There are people who would say that's because not everybody is equally up to the task of being a successful person. Well, I do admit that people have personal shortcomings, but the larger factors that impact poverty are only at best partially about personal characteristics. They're as much or more about large macroeconomic forces that none of us can contend with individually. We can only barely contend with at all in some kind of group context like a union, most of the time, most of us are sort of thrown into the deep end of the pool. And there are times when we are clever enough to sustain ourselves even so.
It's 1 o'clock.
But it's kind of hard to expect anybody, even somebody who comes from a privileged background, to be able to control the large economic forces that have to do with employment and so forth. All right, we didn't get to the story
It's okay.
because it was important to talk about beggars, and because you're going to see how important this is as you read the story. That's the story we're going to read for next time, and we're not going to get through the first section entirely. I'm telling you because it's long. It's long. But we'll spend 2 times on the first section, and then hopefully once we get to the individual days, we'll do a day per day.
Okay.
Okay, and Kim now knows where the story is. So we'll be all set in that regard. Everybody have a great Shabbos, and remember to complete the work of your own personal creation during the day to come. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.